We just wanted to say thank you from all the parents. I know that that was not an easy thing to do, and it was a really great example for us to show the kids what to do if you know that something's the right thing to do, even though it's hard and it's standing up against a lot of powerful people. So we had one case already at the beginning of the school year in one of my kids' classes. All three of them are beneath the age of vaccination, so they can't get the vaccine yet. And we had no other cases in that class, and I 100% think it's because of the mask mandate. Otherwise, we would have had a lot more kids infected. And having one kid who had RSV as a baby, that's really important to me. So we just wanted to say thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Thank you, and thanks, Noah, for your bravery to speak. I hope, as an example, that it tells you, Noah, and your brother or sister that you should be the mayor someday. And mayors can do some good things in communities. And I'm biased. I think cities are where it's at, and you should run for the city council someday or be the mayor of both, because you get to help your neighbors and make decisions that hopefully make people's lives better. So thanks for being brave and talking to us tonight. Can we clap for Noah? Yes.
Mayor, my name is Patty Jensen, and I live out there at 2200 West, where the North Salt Lake's trying to annex us. I went to the Planning Commission meeting that was for entities. I was the only one there. The city wasn't.
The North Salt Lake.
The North Salt Lake. And I just want to tell you how embarrassing it is when nobody's there, and they used it to say that Salt Lake City doesn't care about the people because they didn't respond, and they sent it to several agencies in Salt Lake City and nobody was there. And I've seen the letter today that somebody wrote finally. But and then we found out by shock that the airport made an agreement with the developer. We didn't know about that, big secret, I guess. And so, the developer, went out on the planning commission because of those things. I want you to know.
The developer went out, but
I think the planning commission now is leaning towards the developer because there was I couldn't talk because it was for entities. The one that did a good job was North Salt Lake Police Chief or Fire Chief, and he did bring up the access area, but there was nobody from Salt Lake City, and of course the airport. And then they said they had agreement with the airport. They traded so they wouldn't talk, against the project for some kind of easement, some kind of agreement, but we never knew about it.
Patty, I'm sorry you were there alone.
Well, when they used it, they said, see, Salt Lake City doesn't care. I couldn't stand up and say, oh, I'm sure they do.
And we submitted the letter that you saw today, they had in their hands. So that's really disturbing and unfair that they would say that. It's many pages long, and I'm always going to be honest with you. So that aviation easement, that's meaning that when our airport continues to expand in terms of number of flights and all of that it's in the future flight plans that there could be flights over that. That's why we could never, in good conscience, allow our zoning to change to allow for permanent residential use out there. So they knew that. I'd met with them at the very beginning of my time in this office, and I said, we're not going to do that. And they said, well, people deserve affordable housing, and they can deal with the sound of the jets flying over their houses to be able to afford to live here. And I said, that's like saying we can build cheaper houses on, next to the sewage treatment plant in the parking lot, and that it will be more affordable for them. That should be okay if they keep their windows closed. No, the FDA and the FAA don't want people living under flight easements. So they did agree. They did an agreement, and those kind of agreements aren't typically advertised between a private landowner and the airport, but it definitely wasn't meant to be kept a secret. And I can see how you felt finding that out there.
One of the things is I called Bradley from the airport after the next morning, and he said yes, and he told me about the sound and the traffic. And then he talked about not building 100 feet buildings. That was an agreement. But he said, and I don't know if this is in writing because I haven't seen the letter, but part of that agreement was that they cannot speak publicly against this development.
But the airport cannot.
Yeah. And I said, well, I know you have concerns. And he says, yes, but I'm not going to talk about them.
And I don't know that part of the agreement. I haven't looked at the airport's actual legal agreement with the developer, and now I will. But it's in their authority to make those kind of agreements. But what I was going to say about not being there, Salt Lake City, and you know this from our inland port litigation that we're in right now, trying to defend cities' rights to plan for themselves, to set their own zoning, to be able to collect the taxes in an area, to be able to take care of the area, and to not have some other body come in and decide to override the uses of an area, the zoning of an area. Now, that area that and many other parts of our city and others are allowed to be annexed through a certain process. When those developers heard me say, no, we're not going to rezone for you to build houses there, they went to the county council. And James Rogers, myself, and other staff members engaged in public meetings with the county council and a lot of private meetings to say, please understand what this developer is willing to do on this property and why we are so opposed to it. Their county council still gave it a thumbs up, which through the process then kicks it to North Salt Lake, who is interested in annexing to it. Because we respect cities' autonomy to make their own land use and zoning decisions, at that point, I think from a moral standpoint, we didn't feel like we could go in and try to enact our zoning determinations and land use determinations on their planning commission. So we submitted all of those reasons in writing. That's the reason that you didn't see us at that planning commission meeting. And it's a hard, speaking of trade-offs, as we talked earlier, that was a hard one because we really put our hearts into our own process and then to the county when it had to go there. And I'm sorry you were there alone, but I want you to understand why we weren't there. Oh, there you go.
Glenn Landon. I haven't been to community council meetings before, so I'm not updated. Maybe Lynn Skidmore behind you can give me an idea of whether I'm talking about things that had already been covered. But my worry was we've had lots of free smoke lately, and I assume once the inland port comes in, we're going to have a whole lot more and for a lot longer time. And I wondered how successful the city has been at trying to put controls in place or make sure that we're 215 in the area here isn't going to be overrun with pollution and that sort of thing.
Yeah, great question. And I want to talk about it in two parts. First, we still have our land use authority, which we fought back from the original take that the state legislature did in the beginning of the inland port legislation, where they created a pathway that any private property owner could have a path to overriding essentially our land use decisions through our planning commission and our city council to an unelected board, which was the Inland Port Authority, before they even put the board together. So we've fixed that from a legislative perspective, and they do not have an ability to override our land use decisions as it sits today. And I say as it sits today because that legislation gets brought up every legislative session, and it's a can of worms, and we never know what is necessarily going to be written in there at the last moment, or that there may be retribution for other things going on in the city, and I just say that because we've all seen it in the past. So I don't feel secure enough with the legislative guarantees that we have. We are working, and we have a letter submitted to the Inland Port Authority that your community council's members and leadership has seen before. It's not a secret letter, talking about a way we could get to a contract, a legal contract that assures the city of these things that the majority of them are already in the legislation. But as I said, I would like a more short guarantee through a legal contract that can't be reopened by the next legislative political win. The second piece of this is the path that we're on right now, and that is the fastest growing population as a state in the nation. We are consuming and buying goods online at an increasing frequency, and these deliveries, both into the valley and then to our front doors, are vast majority by truck. This is not a good trajectory for our air quality. And I think that it's important that we acknowledge the path that we are on right now of increasing truck traffic, increasing air pollution, therefore, and increasing impact on our infrastructure that you and I pay for as residents of this city. Also, as the intersection of the West, we're going to be paying for goods coming through our city and into our city that don't ever even end up in our hands. So acknowledging that, whether or not we can agree on the path we're on, that's where we're at. And the opportunity, which is not guaranteed yet with the inland port, is that they dramatically increase rail component of this shipping infrastructure system. And if you move, there's a statistic, and the exact numbers are escaping me, but moving a ton of goods by a gallon of diesel in a truck can go about 23 miles per gallon. Moving a ton of goods, a gallon of diesel, and rail can go over 200 miles per gallon. There are some very real air quality and environmental impacts about how these goods come and go. Now, when they're delivered to our houses, that's a whole other ball of wax. And there are improvements coming with the semi-truck tractor industry. They're electric. There's some hydrogen things coming online. But I'm concerned about our ability to negotiate and incentivize, if we can't insist, that the shipping companies that are coming in to the inland port here at the hub invest in these kind of technologies. There's one other piece to it. In this neighborhood, a neighborhood south of here, you'll find trucks in the middle of the night, semi-trucks that are coming in. They have a delivery tomorrow, and they are going to sleep in their cab, and they run those trucks through the night to power their television, charge their phone, heat or cool the cab, because there is no infrastructure out there where they're going, the warehouses that exist there today already, to accommodate the electric plugins that these trucks have to run those power sources, to heat and cool them. That's what the inland port should be paying for. And I know that's in their plan, but I need better assurance. So there's the to and from that we would benefit, I believe, from increasing train use over vast majority truck use in and out. And then there's what do the trucks do when they get here? How are they waiting for their delivery overnight? Are they parking out down your street and running that diesel truck all night? And then what kind of trucks and delivery systems are they investing in? Our litigation is still waiting a decision from the Utah Supreme Court. But if you were able to tune in, or if you have an interest to go back and listen to those April deliberations that happened earlier this spring, I think Salt Lake City did a fantastic job, and our attorney, Sam Slark, just knocked it out of the park. And it was very encouraging. So we don't know when that decision will come, but where the city lands with our authority to collect taxes that happen in our city will affect every other city in the state of Utah. That is a big part of why we're doing this. It will also affect our ability to have more of a say in the incentivization, or hopefully the requirements that happen with the companies who want tax increment financing to locate here. They want tax increment financing, but right now we don't hold those tax increment liquid dollars. The 25% that we have as a city is going to affordable housing, as RDAs are assured through legislation to be able to do, and our service abilities to be able to send a fire department out there, to have police officers there to plow those roads, which we're legally obliged to do as a city. So the 25% we have doesn't give us negotiating ability. That's what the inland port has in their hands, and that's what we're litigating over right now. That was a long answer, but it has some important components. I hope that helps.
Okay, maybe a quick follow on. How close are we to having it actually built and increased pollution?
Well, a lot of the talk that I'm hearing from the Inland Port staff is not about the hub, it's about the spokes. And they've been focusing on other parts of the state much more than they've been focusing on here. I know that the Inland Port Board had a meeting today, and there was a very late submitted proposal on their agenda that they create a public infrastructure entity, and they decided, I think wisely, not to do that with such short notice and without being able to solicit public feedback on that. So things are not moving as quickly as I think we feared they may, and it's interesting that they're focusing on the spoke aspect. Great questions.
Thank you.
And I was going to ask you, tacos? Are people getting hungry? I'm not leaving, but
If they want, they can go back and then come back.
it took much more than 10 minutes.
If you want to go get tacos, go do it, and you can bring it here and eat it.
Hi, Julie.
I would like to ask a question.
Yes.
On 2200 West, the Swanner property, they have a certain amount of property that each little place has to have. We were kind of talking as our community council. What we really need is a buffer in between the houses that are on 2200 West and the businesses. Is there a way that they can put all of their properties together and make a buffer on 2200 West with that property?
I definitely don't know enough of those details or what the zoning currently demands to answer that question, but I'm asking Weston and Josh to get with you or take notes right now, because I would be guessing off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Lawrence Medina. I appreciate I appreciate the money that you're putting aside for the Warm Springs and Fisher Mansion to restore it. And I just want to say, thank you. If that would really be, I mean, it's not a gesture to see the old plunge going. It would be nice to have the little pools and just old timers like us to go relax and sore backs and joints and muscles. So I read that in your budget. Can you add on a little bit more?
Yeah. Is it Lawrence?
Yes, in fact, I wrote you a letter about, Sylvia Lilly.
Yeah.
Okay, about the trees they wanted to knock down. And you responded quickly and appreciate that. And you had no intention of doing that. But it's, to restore that'd be, I think, a plus to the city.
Well, I appreciate the support. Lawrence was talking about Warm Springs and Fisher Mansion, and I have a proposal to the city council right now for a bond. And the bond, by the way, is not new money from us as taxpayers. We just paid off a bond at the Steiner ice sheet up where the Olympics partially happened. And we paid off that bond, so we have some capacity to do new projects without increasing taxes. Some of the projects on there were Warm Springs and Fisher Mansion, also Raging Waters, to be converted to a regional park. So I hate to kind of disappoint you, but the Warm Springs and Fisher were not for a full renovation. It was enough to stabilize the buildings, and they are leaky. They've been affected by the earthquake, and they've been affected by zero maintenance for decades. So this is enough money, we hope, according to the engineers who've looked at it, to get these buildings to a stable place where we could look at maybe a public-private partnership, as people around Warm Springs have been trying to organize to do, where a private operator could invest in the building, manage it, be a public-private partnership, for example. The same thing could happen at Fisher Mansion. And so it's just enough to kind of get the buildings in a workable state, not to fully renovate them yet, but it's a big step that the city has never taken on those buildings that have been sitting there. So thanks for the support, and I hope that you might be able to speak to the city council at one of their public hearings when they're considering these bond options, or at least write to James Rogers, your council person, and express your support for it. It goes a long way to hear from residents. Terry.
Hi, my name is Terry Marasco, and I've been working with this community even though I don't live here. One of the big concerns I have, and I think I heard it tentatively in your voice, but I heard it from Chris Wharton, and that was, for example, Chris said in the meeting, we don't want to get on the Illenport's case too much because we fear they'll take away the airport. So I've heard this a number of times, so I think if an administration operates out of fear...
He's not my administration.
No. Administration council, but I think tentatively you're worried about the legislature. I think if you operate out of fear, you absolutely will be pressed down and you'll get nothing out of it.
I agree, and I think if I were operating out of fear, I wouldn't still be suing the state of Utah. And I don't agree that we are making decisions around that. The state has had their eyes on the airport forever. Mm-hmm. And we've had representatives like Kim Coleman try multiple times with many pieces of legislation to take the airport from us. But we have a darn good airport. It's better than it's ever been. And the best part is our airline partners love Salt Lake City, and they are happy to go up to the legislature and tell them, we don't want to be in business with you, essentially. We're very happy with the city. So I think it's on the spectrum of the million ways that things could be extracted from us to hurt us, but it is not driving my decisions or my considerations around whether or not to continue the litigation with the state or how we are operating in terms of partners with the Inland Port Authority, the state of Utah, and Salt Lake City. So I agree with you, Terry. Thank you. Okay. We'll pass the mic down here. Right there. Tell me your name.
Hey, Sandell Briggs.
Sandell?
So, question for you. This is kind of a loaded question, but what is the city doing to address kind of the homeless issue and the crime over in the Fair Park area? Because it feels like ever since the road homes closed downtown, that's kind of pushed all the homeless people into the communities around us. So what are we doing to address that? What resources are we providing them, the homeless people, so that way they can, they have access to it and have knowledge to get those resources? And then also, with a lot of those people, a lot of it is drug addiction. What are we doing to help get them to recover to be useful people in our communities?
Sandell?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool name, great question. Thank you for asking that. There is a community commitment program that we started last October, which is 14 or 15 different organizations from VOA, the Road Home as it exists today, Detox Center, Housing Advocates, Health Department doing COVID testing and COVID vaccination. Even the driver's license division is coming out and helping individuals get their driver's license so that they can connect to those housing or those next steps of services. Even our Justice Court is coming out and resolving outstanding warrants with individuals where they're at. So this was an idea that evolved out of our once-a-year program at Salt Lake, or at the Salt Palace, where all these service providers and barbers and photographers to take family photos would come together in the Salt Palace, and we'd kind of shout out to the community of people experiencing homelessness, come on in, connect with these services, and it's been really successful. That's going to keep going. But we realize, we need to go meet people where they're at And we especially need to do that when we're going to close an encampment because it's become full of bio-waste and needle hazards, which is another form of bio-waste, but you know the other part I mean. And there are lots of these areas around the city. And the individuals in these encampments are getting engagement 2 to 3 weeks of these service providers coming out, trying to make a connection, get to know the person as an individual. Are you a veteran? How old are you? Do you have kids? Where's your closest family? What kind of resources are available to you? And there's a sad reality to the engagement that's been happening since October, where the vast majority of people don't want services. And these are encampments. Now, anyway, so I'll tell you that those who say yes to even getting to know the outreach workers and sharing their information about what their needs are, do you have mental health needs? Is there substance use needs? Are there age-related health concerns? The majority of even those people who do engage are saying no to services. After 2 to 3 weeks of this engagement, that's when the health department comes in and closes the camp, meaning everybody knows in advance that they're going to have to move or say yes to these services. Could be a detox bed, could be a shelter bed, could be a hotel room, depending on their needs. So most people say no. And we move on and we do another area. North Temple, especially around 8th and 9th West, is not majority homeless individuals from the outreach that we've been doing. The we of these many these organizations and nonprofits and government institutions. It's people coming out to use and sell drugs. So the connections are even fewer people who are in need of shelter and interested in changing where they're at in that moment. And our response earlier this spring was to pay the Downtown Alliance to hire more downtown ambassadors, which has really just been in the downtown core, to extend onto North Temple. So we've had the downtown ambassadors out there doing this work of positive presence, engaging with business owners, engaging with people on the street, and really continuously, how you doing? They carry water bottles, they carry naloxone, they administer naloxone, they will call VOA Street Outreach if someone is in need, they'll call an ambulance if someone is in need, and their statistics are really incredible. These are incredible individuals. Yeah, the yellow shirts, that's the downtown ambassadors. So the city's paying for that.